Welcome back to the Art of MMA podcast, a Kick Your Post Productions with your host, Amal Thompson, and I'll let Roger do it this time.
And I'm Roger. Thank you.
There we go. And we've been doing this for a few months. As a audio only podcast, we've been covering the MMA for years now. But since Rogers joined the team, he's made some speculations on some other cards that I always thought was kind of interesting. I don't know if you remember the last time
Well,
you
thank you.
brought about the idea that things might not be what they seem. Some palms
Yeah.
might be getting greased. Um, in the sport, whether it be a
Yeah.
referee, or the performance of some fighters, and you might have been ahead of the curve because this last week, um, on a random night at the Apex, a
Mm-hmm.
minus 275 fighter took the octagon with a fighter that was presumably of lower skill set, um, according to Vegas, according to the UFC, because the odds are set a certain way. The minus 275 fighter, if I'm not mistaken, was the A side. Um, Saw some interesting action on a bout, right?
Yes.
His line fluctuated throughout the week, but an hour, I think they said between 5 to 2 hours before the fight, five large bets, specifically at the Hard Rock, came in on his opponent to win by first round. And a lot of money to the tune of $16 million, a $60 million handle came in on the fight. So much that it brought his line from 275 all the way down to I think it was minus 175. Just unheard of for a random fight
That's big.
in the Apex on a Saturday. Um, we talk about dabbling on this pod.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but if you hear the units we talk about, we do not have the wherewithal to move the line. And when it comes to making silly or educated narrative based dabbles, we feel like you, something to that magnitude is definitely smoke to a very dangerous fire in the sport. What do you think?
I must say, you know, this one raised a lot of red flags for very good reason. Um, and when you watch the fight, I mean, you even the commentators on it were just commenting on how the wrong things were being done.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that, and they even go to the UFC, if and the UFC knew about it before the fight and let the fight go on, which was somewhat surprising to me.
Extremely
Uh,
surprising to me,
but
yeah.
I would say that there's been some questionable calls, some questionable things happen that um, makes people suspicious throughout the years, and I think some of that's coming home into the UFC, and I would not be surprised if this fighter took it.
Yeah.
Um, I would not be surprised for him to have been the only one to take it. There's a few of these times where, you know, people go out and they lose fights that they're supposed to win and in spectacular fashion where they could have made better decisions. And for whatever reason, they didn't. And it's easy to chalk it up to, oh, I just made a bad decision. I'm not sure that all those bad decisions are just bad decisions.
Yeah, you're talking about um, guys making bad decisions. We're not putting smut on anybody's name by any sense of the word, but
Right.
there was a card in Dubai recently where some underdogs were running rampant,
Oh,
winning fights. I think
absolutely.
that was one of the ones where you drew attention to one of the referees because we had a guy suffer, I think it was 8 or 9 knockdowns
Yeah.
before it finally got
Yeah.
called.
Hmm.
We had a guy who was a minus 250. I think it was higher than that, minus 400 favorite or something like that. The only juice people wanted to really take was him to win by knockout. There kept being references to him having a wedding coming up and needing to earn the money. What if he did earn the money?
Hmm.
by taking a
Yeah.
dive, right? We don't want to again, we don't want
Yeah.
to call guys out, but certain things start to look a lot more questionable when you get into the realm of potentially whether it's the mafia or oil money from abroad or even random influencer uh, betters who are connected to the UFC, whether directly or indirectly, speaking to these fighters, having a close enough connection with these guys to be like, hey, what if you lost in the first round and you make more than your purse? How do you feel about that? Right? So, um, we talked a little bit off air about how the fight looked. You're way more
Yeah.
versed in the idea of what proper ground game and grappling should look like as
Yeah.
somebody who's wrestled in your lifetime. I'm a little bit of a
Yeah.
novice in that. I've been watching the UFC for a very long time and covering it, but from definitely a layman's perspective. I can speak on
Right.
striking. I can speak on how the fight looks, but you're seeing some stuff that, as a grappler, you don't allow to happen. So we figured we'd watch this fight. We'll put in a clip
Yeah.
post credit, not post credit, well, editing, post editing, to kind of see, so you guys can kind of watch and follow along what we're doing. But we're gonna start the card now and just kind of cover this very short first round that kind of took place.
Yeah.
So starting in round one, we got I don't know who the ref is for this one. Do you know?
Let me see.
It looks like a newer guy, but we got Dulgarian in red, and we got Valle in the white trunks. Got Dulgarian coming out, a little bit striking. Distance control,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Very typical stuff, very normal stuff, controlling the spacing in the ring. Shot a takedown.
So he's shooting that takedown. He didn't go all the way through.
Yeah,
He gets him to the fence,
yeah,
and you're gonna see he's gonna dig an underhook here, right
yeah.
there.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit pause
And you
right there.
see that position right
I'm gonna
there?
hit pause right there where he has
That
him like
yeah.
sprawled. Okay. So
Never,
never.
never do you have somebody stay in that position
Yeah.
for that long. If you get where the guy digs an underhook and it's mostly at the elbow right there,
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to readjust. You're trying to do something. You're not just leaning against the guy where he's got one arm up and you know
Mm-hmm.
that was my first thing where I saw it. And admittedly, I heard the accusation before I watched this fight
Yeah.
because I had watched the later parts of this fight. This happened while I was away. So when I did get back, I did have that bias that hey, maybe something's up, and
Yeah.
this was the first thing that made me think, this is not right because you don't stay in that position. And funnily enough, I think I told you, I've never seen anybody get in a position quite like this.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier in the card, Dumas had his elbow up like that,
Yeah.
but he didn't stay there. He had his arm trying for the shot. The guy had an underhook and he was stuck, but he didn't stay there. You don't stay in a position that's that disadvantageous, and he just did. And I thought, this is really weird. Like he should be adjusting. He should be trying to do something. You're not going to drive through when somebody's holding you up like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to keep trying to drive through. You're going to try to get to a better position, and he just didn't. And was it 5-6 seconds? He just stays there like he's trying to power through it. But I just if he's not doing something trying to give the other guy an advantage,
It's questionable.
I'd say
IQ.
yes, low fight IQ in this position. Yeah.
No disrespect to Dumas because he hasn't really had the run in the UFC that was expected or anything. I mean, he's still a UFC fighter. I think they re-added him to the roster recently too, so he'll get a couple more opportunities to show what he could potentially do. But based on both guys' records, you'd figure this guy knows how to defend this position. If Dumas, with the struggles he's had in the octagon, is able to defend the same kind of technique. We're going to go ahead and resume so we could kind of see where it goes. We're at the 4-minute and 23-second mark. He's still in that position. He's still giving that arm up.
Yep. And look at that. He's still He's not adjusting
He's not
at
adjusting. He's
all.
still allowing the arms to be out there, even when there's a clear way for him to pull
Look,
them back. Yeah,
yeah. So he makes a few attempts as if he's trying to do it. See his arm on the leg there,
yeah,
but he's not trying to stand up.
no,
He's not really trying to fight the hands.
no.
He's just letting this guy have that position
There we
and like
go.
nothing there.
Gives his back. Right there, he has
So
an
he's holding.
opportunity. He kind of pulls the arm
Yep.
underneath. I don't know if that's a.
Yeah, that's a
He could get up
that's
right
a
there.
legit defense there. Um, Holding that arm is going to keep him from going places,
Yeah.
and it does look like he's trying to fight here to get out, or at least to not be in such a bad spot.
But the
So he's got that figure four on the body,
yeah.
and that's a bad position to be in. Um, but you see how he's wrapping that arm?
Mm-hmm.
Look how he's not pulling it off. He's not he's got a hand on it, but he's not pulling the arm around his neck.
No, he's
And
pulling the long one.
whenever Del Valle does that, like, and he gets on the ground, he pulls the other one, but the one around his neck he leaves be.
Yeah. For me, I think what it's gonna lead me to do, not necessarily on the pod right now, right? But I definitely am gonna have to watch a couple other fights of guys that we know are not the best ground specialists going
Yeah,
against guys who have a huge advantage on the ground, a la like Oliveira opponents and um obviously the Makachev Habib opponents, right? Where when they get into these competitive, well, not competitive, these uncompetitive ground actions, what does it look like?
yeah.
Because we have
Well,
history
yeah, and
behind
you
this
have
one.
guys that are supposed to be very good grapplers that some people just make them look like they don't know what they're doing. That does happen.
Yeah,
Um, but and a lot of fighters end on that last sequence where they've got the legs in and you can't get up and he's ground and pounding. He didn't go down there, so to his credit, he wasn't.
yeah.
Um, so he's trying to looks like he's trying to fight off the choke. He's making the faces that you
Unfortunately,
don't
though, I
really.
think there was some action on him losing by submission on top of him losing first
Yeah.
round. So him not going down to the punches would also kind of like,
So you see him fighting that top hand,
yeah,
but he leaves the bottom hand.
yeah,
He doesn't attack the bottom hand, the one around his throat. He never attacks, so it's always there for the guy to go back to.
yeah,
So it looks like he's fighting, but how much is he fighting,
yeah.
right?
It's
So
questionable.
there you go. Even when he started to pull it off and get some relief, he left it there. So then he goes back to that. That right there, he could have pulled that arm down. Like the arm's on top of the head. There's nothing holding it there except for the other
They're
guy's
in the
strength. You've
middle of
got
the
two hands.
octagon too.
Yeah.
He has less leverage
So
on against the cage. Like he has less leverage than if he was against the cage. Um,
yeah,
yeah, there's questions to be asked, and again, I'm a layman, so I'm not gonna act like I'm looking at it. It's like just stand up, hit you with the Derek Lewis. You know,
right.
ground game is not real. Just stand up. But looking at it through the lens of this is potentially somebody who got the call and said, "Hey,
hmm
you want to win, right? Like
Yeah,
financially, you want to win.
yeah,
First round submission with you being this big of a favorite. Put 10,000 on that, give you a half cut. That's substantially
yeah,
bigger than probably what you're making. But
yeah,
my first question to pose to you is,
yeah.
as a viewer, right?
hmm
And it's hard to do it now because we already had the preface of the big handle and the five large bets coming in from five different people, and you know,
Right.
um, there's even prior video of Dulgarian saying like he wish he could bet on himself, um,
hmm
and dabble in that world. Do you think if you were watching this live on Saturday, you would have as many questions without the knowledge that was given to you about it?
I I would think, having watched that fight, that he was overmatched and underskilled for this opponent. That's what I would think watching that. Um, And when I was watching it, because I'll be honest with you, I told you I knew it was the accusation was there. When I when I thought Duval was the one who threw the fight when I watched it the first time.
Really?
I didn't think it was Dulgarian because I hadn't heard all the particulars. I just heard that they had thought that. So my first thought was that, was with that shot, but I still thought that Duval was going to throw the fight. And so when he's in the the rear naked at the in there, and I hear DC saying he should not be punching him. He should be trying to fight the hands. Why is he not fighting the hands?
Mm-hmm.
And you could hear him kind of getting frustrated with like, why is this guy not fighting the hands? And I was like, I wonder if I made a mistake. I wonder if
Yeah.
it's the guy on bottom. Like I'm wondering how he's going to turn this around. Um, and sure enough, it was Dulgarian. But um, Duval, to his credit, he was doing everything he was supposed to be doing. You know,
Yes.
it was just the defense there. I would think watching this fight, knowing nothing about it, that Duval's did everything right. Dulgarian is underskilled and overmatched, and that's what I would think watching this fight. And being that he was the favorite and a pretty
Sizable.
good size favorite
Yeah.
there,
Sizable.
sizable favorite.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's very concerning. And to have it play out like that, I bet UFC doesn't let that fight go on next time if
Um,
they knew about it ahead of time.
but how? You know what I mean? Like, how do you get the intel ahead of time? Um,
Well, they said that they let him know. They let the UFC know. They said Dana
oh
White
yeah,
knew
he did
about the
call. Yeah, he
accusation
did
before
call.
the
He did
fight.
call the FBI. Yeah, correction.
Yeah.
Because I heard Dana say he called the FBI and he called the fighter himself and say, "Hey man, some fishy stuff's popping up out there. Heavy handles against you. Do you owe anybody? Did you talk to anybody? Did anybody approach you?" Guy said, "No, I'm gonna kill this guy." Proceeded to go in there and show low level grappling, as a minus two
Mm.
seventy five favorite. Uh,
So he knew it. He knew at the end his UFC career was over.
Probably because he got
He
approached pre
he
fight.
just lied to the boss.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I didn't know that happened. I just knew that they had approached Dana and let him know.
yeah.
Um,
That's why
but
Dana
I didn't
said
know
he
that he
went to
actually
the
talked to the
FBI
fighter.
right after the fight. Dana said as soon as he
Oh, after
lost.
the fight?
Dana said as soon as he lost the way he did, right?
Yeah,
That he went straight to the FBI right after the fight and said, "Hey, this is the
right.
information I have. I spoke to the fighter. You know, whatever came in, heavy handles wise, he pretty much executed in there, right?
Yeah,
Didn't lose by knockout,
nope.
like you said.
And he
Didn't
could have.
didn't lose
That's the
by
strange thing.
stoppage.
Like,
Yep, didn't lose by stoppage, right? Lost
yeah,
by submission in the first round.
they had the body lock on there with the legs around the stomach, and he's getting ground and pound. He could have, if he wanted to just throw the
Could
fight
have called
anyway,
it right there.
let his hands go from the side of his head and not defended it. But he did defend that one,
Mm-hmm.
and being that he defended that one just fine, he's actually supposed to be a good grappler, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm not mistaken.
A lot of what
I
I was
want to
seeing
say
in the
he's a
previews,
black
he
belt,
was
right?
grappling. I mean, I didn't even go that deep. I just know that a lot of the previews they were showing it was him grappling with other opponents, right? So I don't know. I stand with this, right? Fixing fights or infiltrating sports with whether it's illegal money or illegal parties trying to, alter the results so that they could win is a story as old as time. This is not new.
Hmm. Oh
This
yeah,
this is
no,
not new to
absolutely not.
the new sports book betting world. If anything, it's just more accessible in more states now for somebody to go and have either people execute these heavy bets for them at legitimate casinos rather than it being in the underworld of uh, the crime world, essentially, right? The mafia's been doing it for years. The mob's been doing it for years. Um, and on a smaller level, other bookies and uh, people like that who,
Hmm.
you know, whether they try to mess with a fighter or player's integrity by getting them involved in sports gambling on a bit of a bookie to better relationship, and then leveraging that relationship if they're down a substantial amount of money, uh, to have them toy with the results, whether it's shave points or shave stats or start a game and then sit out, or in this case potentially lose in a specific way in a specific round. Um, I personally believe it's not a simple fix as to say it's just gambling is the problem, right? I might be a bit biased based on, again, we dabble for fun, but in
Yeah.
a lot of these ways, I feel like it's not the public dabbling that is the issue. It's the
No.
same people that if, you know, I'm sure if you go back and do history with whoever might have did this fights fix, that in the history of um, their business operations, when Hard Rock went down in Florida, I think it was right before COVID, they pulled Hard Rock off the market because there was an argument with the reservation, like the other sports books saying that it wasn't fair, right?
Hmm.
So it went through like a 2 or 3 year period where it was gone. Fights were probably still getting fixed or attempted to being fixed during that window. And technically, it's a lot harder for the public to bet on those fights. But the people who still wanted to execute bets were able to do that
Hmm.
at whatever, It's the age old like opinion that I hold on a lot of things where nefarious activity is gonna be executed if they want to, because they're gonna find a way every time.
Yeah.
Criminals don't worry about regulations and how things are done. If they want something to
Right.
be done, they're gonna do it. That's how I see it. How do you see it? Right? Do you feel like, maybe pulling sports off of sports books and
Well,
leaving it to a very, once you show up in a casino or anything like that would help, or completely doing away with sports gambling, which I feel like that would open up a whole nother can of worms. But how do you feel like we could address something like this that seems so blatant?
so I kind of I kind of agree with you that the criminals are going to find a way. The problem does ultimately rest on the individual. Dulgarian saying he wishes he could bet on himself. I actually kind of agree with that. I think he should be able to bet on himself to win. I don't think you should be able to bet on yourself to lose. I think that should
Yeah,
should be criminal. Um,
I
but I
suck
do
at
think,
grappling. Let me take this dude by submission in case I make a
yeah,
mistake.
I'm gonna sign this fight. He's
Yeah,
gonna kill me, but I'm going
I'm
in. I'm gonna
going
bet
in
big on
there.
him.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think you should be able to do that, but I do think that the fighter should be able to bet on themselves. Mayweather bets on himself, whether he gets somebody else to do it
He got
or he
somebody else
goes
to
in
do it a
there
lot of the time.
himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, why couldn't you do it? You're betting on yourself to win. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so the casinos, you can put the rules and the regulations on them.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking, mafia or mobsters and things like that, I don't know the inner workings of that, but I think that they're going to probably find a way. There's shady characters around this sport, and there always has been. Um, Clearing them out is probably going to be harder than people think because they're like, oh, well, just cut ties with the mobs. Okay, well, or cut ties with these shady people. But then you've got, who is the UFC owned by?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so they're owned by big companies. And so if some of these shady people work for these companies, and you know, you see CEOs and you see high up people in corporations going down all the time for corruption, who's to say that those guys aren't going to get in there and have somebody get to them and get in their ear? And now you're doing it through another channel, and you're just not seeing the shady character that you expect to see,
Mm.
even though they're still shady characters.
Wolf in sheep's
And
clothing type
so,
of stuff.
but the idea, you know, um, and we talked about it the other day. Michael Franchise, he's a um, former mobster. He goes on YouTube. You can watch all this stuff, yada yada yada. But he talks about how he'll get sports people to drop the ball a few times,
Mm-hmm.
so they can bet on this person's going to fumble 3 times in this game because that athlete is in debt to them. And so Dana talking to him saying, "Do you owe somebody money?" Like, this could be a way for him to pay back those people he owes money. Let me drop this fight in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do this on a card that's a smaller card. We're going to do it on not a main event.
Yeah, he's like, which sicko's watching the
Um,
Apex fourth fight on it
yeah,
anyway, right? Like, who cares?
not a super well known fighters
Mm.
either way. Um, a very niche bet, first round submission in one of those fights, and you move the line on that,
You move the line
that
on
raises
that,
red
yeah.
flags.
You put enough money on it to move
And
him
so
from
did
minus 275. Yeah.
Dulgarian. Yeah, it's not like somebody came in with a strong opinion about you know, the Cyril Gane Tom Aspinall fight. I mean, this was
Yeah.
a much less well known fight. Um, and so I think you're going to have those shady characters around, whether they're done, corporately or not. I think I would not be in the minority to say that a lot of the corporations that own these things and take these bets are pretty corrupt themselves. Um,
That is very
and
true.
so, you know, whether you get the mob out or you get, just the shady characters who you might just owe, your local bookie a certain amount,
Yeah.
you know, um, your local bookie might have connections you don't know about.
Yeah.
And so, you know, um, this kind of thing is probably going to continue to happen as long as sports betting is watched over and the corruption is able to be seen. But even if you get rid of that, there's still going to be people betting. So if you make it illegal, there's still going to be bookies taking bets
Exactly. You're probably
because the
going
criminals are going
to
to find a way.
a less regulated version of it because it's going to be happening behind closed doors, not in a casino, where it cannot
Yeah,
necessarily be regulated.
but
So,
I think the very first step to taking that is allow them to bet on themselves.
okay.
Because if they're going to bet, they're going to bet.
Let me
So
give
you allow them to bet on
you
themselves.
a devil's
Now
advocate
they've
side
got a
of that.
shot to win. All right.
I'm Floyd Mayweather in my prime, $100 million man.
Yep.
Per fight, right? Correction.
Per fight.
Per fight. Yeah, because he was doing numbers when pay per view was rolling,
Yeah.
when people were ready to watch him lose, and it never really came to fruition, right? And I have an up and
Hmm.
coming fighter who hasn't really hit the mark yet in terms of good pay per view dollars.
Right.
I bet on myself to win.
Hmm.
I put, well, depending on the line, right? Say I'm a minus 500 to win. I put 50 million. If my math is correct, that is about $1 million back. Yeah, that's not worth it. I don't know how he was betting on himself because at the back end of his career, his favorite
Yeah.
his favorite lines were crazy. But let's say that's what the case is, right? And I want to just ensure that I lock this up. So I talked to this fighter who hasn't had many big purses, and I'm like, look, man, I sent somebody to try to persuade him to make this fight go a lot easier than expected. Do you think
Hmm.
that is a potential result
Yeah.
if it's a bigger
Yeah.
guy with integrity issues? Because a lot of the bigger guys, we want to believe that if they're getting paid enough, they won't do
Yeah.
nefarious things like this. But I don't know how much you pay attention to the NBA. They're having their own scandal
Yeah.
with not
Yeah, they
necessarily
are.
points
Huge scandal.
shaving, but stat shaving and ability to perform uh, questions. Terry Rozier, a $26 million a
Hmm.
year signee, so not like an entry
Yep.
level rookie or a guy on a 2-way contract, nothing like that. A guy who was a perennial starter for multiple organizations and had signed a contract where he was getting $26 million a year. Went out there and might have faked an injury, but also went out there and had questionable uh, performances in games
Yeah.
when we've seen him, no matter how much ability he's losing over the years, because, everybody's prime runs out, it looked
Hmm.
blatantly bad.
Yeah.
And it comes out that
Uh,
people were getting inside info on whether he'd be, potentially not playing a whole game, um, or the unders on his lines were being hit at a heavy rate that year,
Mm.
and he was seeing money potentially directly from those. And it wasn't even so much like a mob approach him. It was more of like a small underground of him
Hmm.
helping out, I guess, members of his family, but not only members of his family, like members of his team, and it just
Mm.
there's like not his team like NBA team, but like
His
his
entourage.
yeah, like there hasn't been confirmation exactly of where it started, but it's trickled throughout this underground of like poker tables too
Yeah.
that got a NBA coach involved and stuff like that. And those guys are not fighting for 50K show, 50K win
Yeah.
money. Um,
Hmm.
we're talking millions of dollars that they're essentially going to forfeit if caught, and they still were dabbling in such a um, you know, dishonest way of approaching the sport. And in my opinion, at $26 million a year,
Yeah.
I don't think it's for financial gain. I think you just generally have integrity issues. What do you think?
Yeah. So you said something interesting there that I thought was really smart. I mean, illegal is all get out, but really smart. Like, a lot of these people throw a lot of money towards their entourages and their families to help them out. If you're doing that and you're saying, you know what, I'm not going to play as many minutes this time, I'm not going to score as many points, y'all bet on that, and then they get their own money and you don't have to pay anything towards it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to buy anybody that stuff because they're getting it themselves. And so I've never thought about that line. I think it's incredibly smart and clever. Still illegal, mind you, but pretty clever to be honest
Roger
with
said,
you.
"Kudos
Nice
to you
little
if you figured
workaround
it
there.
out." But yeah,
Hey, they figured it out. You got caught. Now you got to take your lumps. You always knew it was a possibility. Yeah, money doesn't always seem to be. I think it comes into question a lot with fighting because of a lot of the lower guys. Obviously, they don't make as much money.
mm-mm.
Um, but I would say you're correct in that from the angle that if I'm remembering right, there was a lot of speculation that Mayweather McGregor
Was
went
a
to the
setup. Yeah.
10th round because Mayweather had bet on himself to win on the in the 10th round. He carried the fight to that round and then put him away in that round because he had bet on a 10th round victory. So,
Oh, like he
um,
allowed McGregor to make it that far, and then Mayweather finished him
yeah,
off that round. Mm.
yeah. So he still bet on himself.
But he
He
got
did it in such
specific.
a yeah. He
Getting
got very
specific is
specific with it.
scary.
Now you're working the gambling, and again, clever, you know.
Nah, getting
But
specific is scary, brother. Especially when you're that much better of a boxer than the
yeah.
opponent. Getting specific gives me reason to pause, man. Gives me reason to
Yeah.
pause.
Um, so yeah, I guess I'd have to backtrack a little bit and say there's still ways that guys can work with that. And I know Dulgarian apparently does have ties to the what's that coach's name that got banned? Was it Kraus?
Oh gosh, he does.
Yeah, he's got ties with him in his
That's
camp. I think he used
terrible.
to be in that camp. And they said if you were under him, basically you got to find a new camp because you're not fighting associated with this guy.
That's
And I'm
terrible.
pretty sure that he has past ties with him. Now, whether he had anything to do with it or not, it just calls into further speculation.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, you got to keep trying with those regulations, trying to be effective and not just trying to say, "Oh, look, we did something." But you try an effective solution. If it's not effective, scrap it and go with something new. I can't pretend to know what would be effective for any of these guys, but you know, major league pitchers throwing games, anytime there's sports and where people can make those decisions in real time and they can fully control them, I think you're going to have
Question.
that potential there. Yeah,
So what do we
you're
do?
definitely going to have the potential.
What do we do, Roger? To all the sports that we love, or all the sports,
Yeah,
because even watching as a consumer without the potential for making money, right? If you're not gonna dabble on these sports or anything like that,
Right.
right? If I'm watching the come up of a guy like a Dulgarian, if I was investing in his career, or
Hmm.
even on the opposite side, if I was a huge Delval believer, and I
Yeah.
felt like with him being undefeated coming into this fight, because I think he was undefeated coming into this fight, um, to watch a win of his come into question like this,
Hmm. Yeah.
um,
What does that do for him? Nobody gives him
yeah,
respect for that win.
nobody gives him respect for that win. Um, or if you're a Dulgarian guy and you feel like, this is a guy who had potential to kind of go up the ranks,
Hmm.
it's tough to see potentially that he could be infiltrated that way. And you're gonna look at other guys in the
Yeah.
future, and it might give you more reason to pause based on ways that they lose. Um,
Yeah. I think this is going to bring fight IQ a lot more into question. Is he
yeah,
cheating or is he just not seeing the opportunities he has?
yeah.
And that's a sad thing. I would say that I am much more of a purist in these. And one thing, tell me what you think of this, because I haven't really thought it through. It
Hmm.
just came up here. So, um, how about you tighten the rules of the sport?
Okay.
How about you make the rules such that everyone knows uh, that University of North Carolina used to do the four corners.
Yeah.
Okay, the four corners was a way for them to be playing basketball, but not trying to score the ball so much as trying to run the clock down. You're manipulating the game, charging penalties. How many times do you see guys flop?
Hmm.
How many times do you see soccer players flop? Um, you got to make why don't we tighten up the rules on that? Tighten up the stalling rules. Tighten up some of this stuff so that uh, it keeps everybody on the same page and makes it a little more obvious when someone's trying to do some of this. It's not a cure all, but it just gives you another point that you can say, okay, this right here is something's fishy here.
I think
You
it's
know,
extremely difficult to tighten those rules in certain sports, at least. I mean, for basketball,
yeah,
for sure, the shot clock probably helps with that a ton. Um, but in terms of like fighting, like okay, if we approach that fight again, do you separate once you realize the guy is clearly not defending an underhook that you say an elementary level wrestler is able to defend? Do you
yeah,
separate that as a ref? Because what if the guy is literally just
mm, yeah,
not in the mindset to
not
be
good enough.
not
Yeah,
defending that? You know what I mean? Because it's
and
it's
we
it's a
mentioned that.
it's a little bit more than like not even good enough sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been off your game one day and not necessarily wrestling, but in some phase of life where
Oh
something
yeah.
that you
No.
do 1,000 out of 1,001 times, you mess up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That happens.
And if Duval catches him on a day like that, and it's not a throwing of the fight, and you take away an advantageous position for a guy who's on his come up, and it's not related to anything nefarious, that's also altering the direction of a fight and the direction of the sport. We've seen guys run into punches that they shouldn't run into, that we come
Yeah.
on here
Yeah.
and have an hour long conversation about how it's going to pan out, right? Charles, do
Hmm.
not exchange with Superior. Have distance. Use your distance.
Well,
Try to play
and
him on the
that's
ground. Don't fight him in the pocket. First thing he does is put his chin right on Superior's chest, pretty much, so he can get uppercutted. You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
well, and if I feel like things that you just described like that is going to be called into question
Yeah.
in the future. Like, did you really want to go in and trade with him? Um, you know, Max Holloway's never been knocked out.
No.
Taporia Taporia wins a title on some guy who doesn't normally get knocked out, and then he goes and fights Max, who never gets knocked out, and now all of a sudden Max is going down,
He
and
flatlines him.
then
Yeah.
and then Charles goes in there and puts his chin in the air. I mean, you could really, if you wanted to dig into it, you could dig into a lot of things and see things that aren't even there, and say, "Oh, well, now I'm calling in Taporia's whole run
And in Ngannou's
because."
run too, when all the guy could really do was punch, and people just kept running.
Or
Yeah.
how about this? Ngannou got beat.
Yes.
Ngannou went and faced Derek Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the most boring fight you've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
How many people bet on them to go to distance?
Not many. Maybe
Hey, if
three or
you
four.
know, and this isn't to impugn them. This is just to say like things you didn't expect that people are going to look back on now and say,
Izzy Romero.
"Oh,
Izzy
yeah,
Romero is one of the ones where it's like
hmm
they stood there for the whole first round with little to no action.
yeah,
Yeah. Everybody thought Romero. Well, actually, correction. There was a little bit of discussion like Romero is a counterpuncher. Izzy is a counterpuncher. They might
yeah,
just stand there and face off for the rounds, but that is another one that you go, you know what I mean? Like
yeah."
what
You
was
see
going on
things
there?
like that,
Um,
and you say, "Is this just the way that it is, um, or is this somebody trying to play the game and win off of points, or is this somebody who's trying to throw a fight?" And for the next little bit of time, you're going to have a lot of these things called into question, at least in the fights coming up. I don't know if they'll go to the past like we were just digging into, but I think you're going to see that coming up. There's going to be people say, "Hey, this guy's better than that."
mhm.
I wonder if he was on the take.
No, I get it, and
And
it's
and
sad.
that is sad because I like the whole adage of um, Steve Prefontaine. He was a runner and tragically died early on. He didn't like the idea of drafting, running behind somebody,
Hmm.
and just keeping your energy and letting it. He wanted to be out there in front. He wanted to be running the fastest race he could run,
Yeah,
and I like that idea. And so I don't like to see people flop on the basketball court. I don't like to see people stalling. I don't like to see people taking advantage of these little rules
yeah.
that are not in the spirit of the game, but they're in like the
The rules of the
the
game.
the
Yeah,
the rule set, so it's legal. It's smart, it's clever, but it's not in the spirit of it. And so I don't tend to like that, and I don't tend to like fighters that do that. Um,
shouts out Jalton
but
Almeida.
yeah, but um, you're gonna see people that do that, and people that work outside of the spirit of the game are probably going to get called into question sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, and so that it's going to be interesting moving forward. I don't have a solution for it. I wish I did,
I very much don't either.
because the RICO laws are something the FBI handles, and I'm sure they'll be looking at plenty of things. But like I said before, even if you get all those shady characters out of it,
Hmm.
you're going to have legitimate shady characters
You're good. Yeah.
who are supposed to be where they are. They're just doing shady things.
Hmm. I don't feel like there's
And
an easy
so
way to stop it at all.
there's not. But it's this one seemed particularly easy to spot.
Yeah.
Spotting it's going to be the
Yeah.
thing where it's going to come down to the criminals in this situation, and in future situations are going to have to be a little bit more tougher. They're going to have to be that much more. The more that they enforce those rules, and the more that they oversee that, the tighter it's going to be and the harder it's going to be. They're still going to find ways,
No, a
but it's
thousand
going to
percent.
be a little bit more difficult for them next time. Um, so
I do feel like
it'll be interesting when it comes out.
I do feel like regulation and having not expanding on sports betting, but regulation and having more
Yeah,
eyes on again
yeah,
being able to pick up these handles coming in, right?
hmm
Um, and alert someone towards it
yeah,
is going to be the next step of really being like, okay, you know, if things shift a little bit too far one direction, we need
hmm
to ask questions, right? Not if Amal gets on a podcast and says, you know what, Mackenzie Dern's
yeah,
definitely going to win by decision because the UFC has its narrative, and then you know what I mean. Nothing
right,
as crazy as that, but um, if Amal walks into a casino on a random Saturday, an hour before the fight, and says, you know what, I just so happened to cash out my 401k because Dilfat's gonna win by first round submission. Those are the ones that are really gonna have to continue to be watched.
Yeah.
But as the sport
Yeah.
expands, you are gonna have more eyes
Hmm.
on these lower level cards, so that's also a slippery slope.
And one thing I'd like to know your opinion on, because, and not to incriminate anybody, um, I saw a report that like 100 Jason Herzog fights
Hmm.
the FBI was looking into. And I don't know the details. I don't know what fights they are. I don't know. I don't know if he has a connection somewhere where there's, or if they've been suspicious
Hmm.
of him. But his name particularly was reported.
Hmm.
Um, and I tend to actually like him as a ref, so I'm pretty surprised at that myself. He has questionable calls just like everybody else has questionable calls.
1,000%.
But it does beg the question: what if someone in those other organizations, like we were talking about, maybe the UFC does want to build somebody up, right?
Hmm.
And so they say, hey, let's, how much they can fix a career by lining somebody up with lower level people
Hmm.
until they get there, just like a lot of boxers do, a lot of managers do, and everybody, Steve Garcia said it in an interview, he'd rather have the easier route to the championship
Yes.
than the harder route. Chael Sonnen has said it, but referees in there making calls. We talked about it with the guy who was knocked down like 7 times,
Was that a
and
Herzog
he's
fight?
still in the fight. Like, I don't know if it was a Herzog fight or not,
Yeah, that would most definitely give him a
but
reason to
like,
pause. Yeah.
there's a lot of those things that seem egregious,
Hmm.
um, and so what do you think about the referees being involved? Do you know if they have stringent checks on their background and anything like that? Because I don't know the answer to that.
Well, it should be more expanded because one of the biggest gambling uh, in sports, like to kind of blow up, you know, um, in the face of like a league was in the NBA. I don't know if you remember it. I think it was like the mid 2000s. I was very young at the time, but I've watched quite a few documentaries on it. There's a specific ref who did get in with the mob
Hmm.
in the NBA, and he was calling fouls or turning a blind eye to fouls, um, and was altering games within like point differentials to allow the mob to hit on these bets, right? Um,
Yeah.
so it's not unheard of. I don't know what the rules are for the UFC referees, but I figured after that whole debacle where a whole team practically lost an opportunity to win a championship in the NBA because he was
Hmm.
calling the
Yeah.
finals that year, and there were some questionable foul calls that weren't called, or he swallowed the whistle during certain windows of the game.
Hmm.
With that transpiring, you figured there'd be a little bit more close watch on who's their family members, what bets are they putting in.
Yeah.
If they have an online book, what's their username? What rate are they hitting at? Because they have all that
Right.
information, right? When you sign up for a sports book, they have your social, they have your address, they have all that jazz. It's not like,
Hmm.
using a online overseas book or using a bookie necessarily. Now, if he's in the
Right.
the dark world of gambling and he does have a bookie, they don't ask you that information. But you still see, in this case, modern America, heavy Venmo payments or heavy Cash App payments or heavy PayPal
Hmm.
payments to someone that would lead you to believe, okay, maybe something questionable's happened here.
Right.
He keeps sending $10,000, or he keeps getting sent $10,000 the Sunday after a card that his brother refereed or something like that.
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
So I feel like there's ways to keep track of it, but again, it takes a lot of man work and labor to kind of connect the dots on stuff like that, because it's not as easy as him walking into a casino if he's doing it, because they're not going to do that even if it's legal,
Right.
right? um
And what do you think they do if they find out that there's something to the referee, and they're looking at his fights? Like,
in the
do you
NBA
go
case, they
back?
didn't go back and like rewrite history. They
I
let
mean,
it
do you
be.
no contest some of those,
You got
or do you just let it be?
in the UFC's case, if it's 100 plus fights, and depending on the level of fights, you can't go back and be like, oh, like unpromote Connor being a double champ if he's involved in one of those fights. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Or like uh correct the financial gain that um Bonfim had for beating Wonder Boy, quote unquote beating Wonder Boy,
Hmm.
and now
Yeah.
headlining a
Yeah.
fight night card. You can't go back and undo those things. Um Even if you make it a no contest, it's kind of like all the college football scandals where
Hmm.
teams did things that were a little bit not above the board, or coaches did things that were not above the board, and they go back and they're like, oh, we're going to strip you of this championship, or we're going to strip you of this Heisman, or we're going to strip you of some wins.
Mm.
Those things still happened.
Yeah.
Like, you might not show on the record, but people who experienced it. People who made money off of
Yeah.
it made money off of it. You're not going back and taking
Right.
it away. Um,
True.
if anything, if you want to go deep enough, you can um reward the people who are on the losing side of those fixes. But the people who are on the winning side, you're not going
Hmm.
to strip the money. That money's spent or gone. You can't just go take that
Yeah.
back out of their account. So it's really just a losing side for the people who are uh, kind of like operating. It's not worth it to go back and lose
Yeah.
twice technically. Um,
And you'd have to go back and have all your lawyers
yeah.
go through that. I mean, the UFC does give win bonuses, so you could try to take some of that back, but the cost of
But
that to go through
why?
court and to have to prove it, you know what I mean? That would
Yeah.
be astronomical. So
Because
I imagine
if
that
those
wouldn't make
fighters
much
aren't
sense.
like involved in the throw or the fix, I
True.
I
Could have been a
won.
judge.
I won. I
Yeah.
don't care what he did. Right? He like you think Bonfim coming into this fight this weekend is like, I know 90% of the world had Wonder Boy beating me, but I
Yeah.
won. Right? So he's like, oh, woe is me. I'm gonna give you this money back because technically I didn't win. No, he won in his eyes. Most fighters are gonna approach it that way, right? Um, the guy that fought Cheetah on this last card, where we thought he lost to uh, Aldo in his last fight, right? Um, I don't remember his name all the way. I think it's Avatar or something like that. He fought Cheeto in Canada, and I texted you saying like I took Cheeto by KO because no matter what Cheeto does, unless it's very definitive, he's not going to win a decision against this guy in Canada, right? If it was come out that Herzog was operating his fight, he's not going to come back and be like, "You're right, I did not win this fight in Canada. Herzog gave me kind of like favorable opportunities in there, and it went a decision, and it's not right. Here you go. Here's the money back. It's just not going to happen." So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's tough. It's just going to end up being a situation where maybe on the record books it looks a certain way,
Yeah.
but they're not going to change anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, more than
So
anything, he gets banned, in my opinion, from refereeing. Um, they,
yeah, if he's found to have had anything
yeah,
happen.
they blast him. Yeah, again, this is all allegations because we are putting
Right.
this out into the ether for people to watch, right? But
Yeah.
um, he definitely get blasted by the UFC. Dana White would go out there and make one of his grandiose speeches and make a mockery of the guy, and oh, we're not connected to cheaters and all this thing, and make a big scene. Rightfully so. That's kind of what he's there as the figurehead to do. Um, he'd probably go to jail, kind of like the NBA ref did.
Mm.
He'd come out and probably try to put other people culpable in the mix.
Mm.
Maybe write a book. And then we'll move
Yeah,
on.
definitely write a book.
Like,
Yeah.
not to sound negative about it, but that's what it is. Life continues. He'll pop up on a bunch of podcasts, and he'll probably claim that it wasn't just him, that he got other referees
Hmm.
to help, and those referees will deny it, and fighters will be like, I know I
Right.
didn't lose that fight, and other fighters are going to be like, I would have won that fight anyway. And it's always going to be
Yeah.
like kind of spoken about for years going into the future, and we're just going to move on. There's nothing else they can really do from like a realistic standpoint to correct those wrongs if he was being paid. You know, at least that's how
Yeah.
I see it.
So knowing what you know about the sport, knowing what you know about the gambling, knowing what you know about uh, how we how we move on or don't move on. How do these accusations, how do they affect you moving forward? Are you more scrupulous on those, like I was saying we would be, or are you a little less, or maybe it doesn't affect the way you see them? You still look at them as the fight's the fight, and they're going to go in there and fight, or are you a little more suspicious?
I approach it with like how I approach a lot of things in life, man. I feel like majority of people, if they put that much effort into a sport like the UFC, right? If you're gonna cheat and steal and do the wrong things, you're probably gonna operate in more fields that is rewarded easier than to create a life where you become a fighter, invest all this time, invest all this effort into this type of sport just to be bought off at the beginning of your career, or you know what I mean? It just feels
Hmm.
very, it's an inefficient way to probably make a quick buck for, even if it's like a year or 2 year period, because it's not like a career that you could do this for a long time, consistently throw
Right.
fights and make a ton of money.
Yeah, in this one, you've only probably got one fight you could throw.
One
You
or
can't
two
couldn't throw multiple fights
max.
because, yeah, you might get a second fight in there, but
Yeah.
after you've lost two fights, the UFC's kind of looking at you sideways because you're not winning.
Yeah. So it's difficult for that to be a thing that consistently happens in the fight
Hmm.
game. In the NBA, if you lack integrity and you do it, um, on the smaller scales, it didn't really affect crazily what happened. It affected some
Hmm.
flow of the game and integrity of the game, and you know maybe games that team could have won if they had Rozier playing at his best, because he is better than what he was doing.
Hmm.
Um, but on that level, again, too many guys commit too much of their life to making it to that level to decide that they're going to throw it away for, you know, a throw here and there. And if they are not a consistent level player, like a Jonte Porter, which was another guy who got caught last year, um, him in garbage time missing 3 point attempts and having people take his under, it didn't greatly affect the outcome of the NBA championship or like the flow of the season.
Right.
So
Right.
in the small pockets that this happens, it does suck to think that it's happening out there, and I'm sure it is.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it's so minuscule in the grand scheme of sports that I'm not going to necessarily be taken like, you know, taken aback and be like, oh, sports are ruined for me. Um, I do
Right.
feel like there's a big argument to like, we're talking about shady characters having guys throw games or throw points or throw fights, but big corporations are getting in bed with gambling, and certain brands are bigger than others, and certain
Hmm.
executives or companies would benefit more from certain teams being on TV or certain fighters making it on
Hmm.
big fights to accrue more viewership so that they can make a lot of money back on the investments that they placed into these organizations, right?
Right.
So the NFL's probably going to want to see Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl more than they're going to want to see Jordan Love in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or
That
we're probably going to want to see the Dodgers playing
oh
for the
man.
World Series rather than seeing the Oakland A's play for the World Series. And I'm not saying it's as simple as like they're going to get favorable calls throughout the year and stuff like that, but that's been happening for decades, where a brand is just bigger than another
Right.
brand. And whether it's on purpose, if it's coached, you're going to want to see certain people at certain points in time for viewership's
Yeah.
sake in certain positions, right? And again, I'm not saying it's a setup or anything like that. I think that's more of a conversation that can be had in the long term. Um, Maybe on a whole podcast potentially, rather than like one guy coming through or one small criminal organization coming through and getting to a specific player or fighter and trying to get them to consistently do
Right.
something that could be seen and weeded out. In Terry Rozier's case, in about 40 games, and in Dulgarian's case in a fight, in a single fight, which maybe they go back and look at those other fights that he
Yeah.
lost, which wasn't a lot of them, and see what they look like. And
Nah.
maybe he threw
It's only
one or
one other fight he's lost.
yeah, so maybe they look at that one and say, okay, what happened there? Was there some movement? Were there some heavy bets on that one too? Uh, was he an
Yeah.
underdog? And maybe that's why we didn't take too much of a stab at it, because like people will blindly bet an underdog sometimes just for the money, for the potential, So there's so much. It could go so many different directions. But me personally, to kind of put a bow on what you asked me, it doesn't really turn me off of sports, because I still believe, even though I'm somewhat of a pessimist in my day to day life, and maybe this is also a part of a pessimistic view, um, humans are going to do what they do anyway. People are going to do what
Hmm.
they do. And if they're going to have integrity and do what they do, sure. If they're not, that's a part of life
Yeah.
too. I just have to roll with the punches. I control what I can control. Um, and then the chips fall where they are, you know? That's
Yeah.
kind of how I see it. How about you?
It's,
Does this kind of change your view on it?
um, it just reinforces that it happens. Um, that's really it. It's something that you kind of have the inkling that it happens. There's been times watching football games where I'm very suspicious of, how the game's being called, how, you know, how many chances does somebody get at the end zone, um, how many, how many knockdowns can this one guy take, and you hear like, I think I've seen at least 7 fighters come out and say I've been approached. So if I'm Dana White, I'm looking, okay, where have you been approached? Is this in your gym? Is this at one of our facilities? Is this something we can do something about? Because, we want to weed it out as much as we can too. But that's 7 fighters in the UFC. I'm sure there's a lot more. And those are the ones who are saying, I turned it down. Uh, well, maybe all of them turned it down. Maybe all of them didn't. But how many fighters are coming forward that didn't turn it down? Um, so I'm sure it's happened. It just, as a fan who likes to yell at referees and likes to, they want their team to win at all costs when things don't go your way. Sometimes you're like, maybe this happened. It might reinforce that a little bit more, reinforce that pessimism a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like
A couple of years ago, the Bengals were playing in the Super Bowl,
yep. Yep, I was about to talk about your Bengals too, but yep.
and I told people, I said they're gonna have to get an interception against the Rams because the refs are not going to let the Rams lose on that. They're going to keep calling pass interference calls. Never mind that I glossed over the game before that where the Bengals got 4 shots at the end zone, all because they got called, they kept getting penalties.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bengals got there because they got so many shots at the end zone. I'm willing to gloss over that because my team got to the Super Bowl, right? But in the Super Bowl, I'm like, there's no way they're not going to let them lose. Bengals are going to have to intercept it. Turns out they didn't get an interception. They lost. Rams win at home in the Super
There was
Bowl.
a
Kind of
questionable
storybook
holding
ending.
call, though. I don't know if you remember it. There's
Not particularly.
yeah.
I do remember the Miami, Ohio State national championship game with the pass interference that is very controversial.
Yeah, but in your Super Bowl, the
Miami
linebacker
thought they won and turned around.
and there's a flag.
No, they gave Ohio State another chance and then they scored.
Mm-hmm. But a linebacker that's no longer on your team
So
was guarding Cooper Kupp, and they called a hold that was very questionable because there's nothing there, and I think it would have led to a 4th down and potentially a field goal try instead of it being like a 1st down that led to a touchdown eventually. That really put him over the top. And Bengals fan that I do content with, shout out Chris, to this day doesn't let it down. Because that was an opportunity.
Yeah.
It was seen as a makeup call from a pass interference that did not get called against the Bengals. So there's a lot. There's a lot, man. There's a lot to it.
Let's talk about makeup calls real quick.
Yeah.
I don't like them.
Me neither.
This whole
Volkov
Alexander
got one.
Volkov
Yeah, Volkov got one.
winning this fight against Almeida. being a makeup from him losing.
Hey,
Like if
narrative, baby.
that
I bet it.
concept,
I bet it. Narrative,
if
baby.
that
Give it to me.
if that concept is happening,
Yes.
that is just as dirty.
No, 1,000%.
You make a bad call, you move on.
Yeah.
Like a makeup call is, oh, and the Bengals Super Bowl. By the way, the penalty that happened on the one touchdown that the Bengals receiver got.
Mm-hmm.
I would gloss over that and be like,
That's what I'm saying.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'd say, yeah, that penalty happened, but I'm willing to overlook it because my team got the victory on it. So I think we do that as people,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe this will reinforce a little bit of that. But in the end, I still think these people put in way too much of their time and effort to throw it away like that because too big of a risk for most of them. And how much are you really going to make? And say you're one of those fighters that threw a fight and your championship run ends because you threw the fight. You made a little bit of money now, but the rest of your life you have to live with I was never a champion or I lost my title.
On top of that, you made it to where a lot of guys are trying to make it to, and you had such little belief in yourself that you took the easy way out for a quick paycheck, right? If that's the case. Or you have so little self-control and discipline that you dug yourself a hole, bookie-wise, that to fix it, you didn't go out and win fights and pay them back.
Right.
You mess with the integrity of the sport that you were working so hard to become a champion in, participate in, be a fighter for years, right? I don't know. Again, it's a combination of integrity, but just also like the self-belief you need to be an athlete in a lot of these promotions and sports. It has to be almost to an insane level for you to get to the height of the heights. So then the other thing is crazy.
Yeah. The other thing I don't quite understand with some of this, and maybe it's because I've never been in a situation, but what if you're trying to throw a fight and you end up winning anyway? Like, what are the consequences of that? Take a controversial fight. You could pick any of them, but one of the biggest ones where people say that somebody got robbed, and no implications here, but just it was a close fight, and people thought it went one way or the other. Say John Jones was trying to lose to Dominic Reyes, and the judges give him the fight anyway. Like, and I'm not saying he did that, that's not what I'm saying. But just like you're trying to lose a fight, you win it anyway. Like, what do you go back to them and say?
You guys
like,
I almost feel like it well enough. Because it has to be a lot.
It's got to be well defined.
Yeah, it has to be a lot.
You've got to have a way to lock it down.
Yeah.
And that's where I think
I'd more go this direction. Like, you remember when I think it was Weidman's first fight back, right? Say you're the other guy and you're supposed to be, I think it was Uriah Hall, right? Say Uriah Hall's supposed to throw that fight against Weidman. But Weidman throws the first kick of the night and shatters his shin.
Yeah.
And now you win off of that. What happens then? Because acts of God could happen. Not saying that God wanted Weidman to break his shin. But something so off the wall could happen that you don't even have a chance to throw the fight. And now you're standing in there with your arm raised. What happens then?
If you're the guy who is, convinced this guy to throw the fight, and he goes in there with every intention to do it, and it goes the other way, like, you've told all these people to bet, like, what kind of position are you in? From their perspective.
We got to run it back. That's how it works.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop until until it's successful. We got to get you in there against somebody else. And this time the throw has to be crazier, right? Which leads to a whole other conversation. Yeah. What if Dulgarian's first attempt at throwing this fight, he did win, and that's why it had to be something as blatant and crazy as first round loss / first round submission loss / submission loss to X fighter. Because it wasn't like a minus 150 level throw. All of those are significant plus money bets that hit. Yeah. To the point where his minus 275 went down to minus 180 or something like that off of like 5 large bets. And again, $16 million handle on a random Apex bet, unheard of. Never usually
That's
that
wild.
much money on 2 random guys. I don't think there's many like fight night main events that cross over that
Right.
what
Yeah.
$2 million, $5 million handle. Even with idiots like me who will go in and be like $10 on round 1 KO, $10 on triangle choke, $10 like even with idiots who do stuff like that, it's not getting to that level of
Yeah.
a handle. So it calls into a lot. It calls into question a lot. That would be a fun thing to do, to go back and be like, look, what happened there?
Yeah.
If that was the
Yeah.
case, what would you do?
But they can track these 5 people. So the people who bet the big bucks, they know who they are. Yeah.
Cameras in the casino, unless if you're nefarious enough, you're sending somebody in to place that bet for you.
Right.
Um,
And then they got to try to
and then they
figure out
got
who
to
those
figure
people
that
were, who
person
they're
out, and then
connected
they got
to.
to get that person to talk about who they're connected to, or potentially take the fall, because who knows, maybe the person who went in and placed that bet in the casino is also down to the guy, so that's his way of potentially slowly paying off his bet, is by being the face
Yeah.
of the guy who puts on the bet, and then your role is to, if they catch you, take the hit and go to jail, right? It could go into
Mm.
so many deeper levels.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I
like
don't even know what do you do.
I don't know. Yeah, I think you stay away from the large bets. I think that's the best way as a fighter. Um, you know, the best way to stop it personally, because it all goes back to the individual. If
Yes.
someone it was, in debt and they had to take one of these, or if somebody offers you and you do take it,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's still an individual thing that you took it.
Yes.
You had to do it.
Yes.
And I learned a valuable lesson when I was wrestling. When I was starting out, we had a guy who was a state champion, and I never got that good. But it was my freshman year, and I'm just trying to figure this stuff out and figure out how to do this. And he hemmed me up so bad, couldn't do anything, and so he got the pin, and it was in practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stand up and I'm like, "Hey, how do you get out of that?" And he said, "Don't get in it," and he just walked away. And I've carried that with me. He
This
didn't know he
dude's a
was.
savage.
He did not. He did not know he was imparting lifetime wisdom to me.
In
He
that
was a
moment.
sophomore in high school, but his simple "don't get in it" was one of the most valuable things, and one of the things to keep me out of trouble in my lifetime. Just that this is going to end bad. Just don't get in it.
Just don't get
You
in it.
know, you know the signs that this is not going well. As soon as you can get off of that road, get off of that road.
Nah, for sure.
You have to stop those. And as a athlete in the UFC, getting into trouble like that, the best option for you was to not get in it to begin with. Because
Yes.
once you go down that road, you're locked into that world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you gotta just stay out of it from the beginning, and or get off that path as soon as you can. I mean, that's the fastest way to fix something, is to to get out as soon as you can.
Yeah,
So, you know,
you're not wrong, brother. Don't get in it. Don't play
yeah,
the games. You know what I mean? There is prizes to be won, but sometimes it comes at a very intense cost. Um,
yeah,
Whether it's your integrity, your potential career, or in this case,
yeah,
even if they come out and it's been very evident that he did it, it could be his freedom, man. So
yeah,
there's a lot to be lost in this case, and we'll
and
be following along for sure to see how it pans out.
absolutely.
Um,
And it's hard for fighters sometimes, I imagine, because they're not risk averse.
no,
They're you don't get in there by playing it safe.
no,
And so for them, maybe maybe that's the way they've lived their whole life, just
you're
right
not
out there
wrong.
on the edge,
Yeah,
and they're just going to keep on going, and it's gotten them this far. But
yeah,
yeah, you gotta be gotta stay out of those situations.
1,000%. I'm excited to see what happens out of this, what comes out of this, where we go from here. Uh, again, going into this new era where there'll be no more pay-per-view fights.
Yeah.
We're gonna have these large cards garnering a lot more viewership that before,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're like a guy like myself or like Roger who likes to cover the sport, you have to dive down all these rabbit holes or pay that hefty fee to see all the fights and pay attention to all the guys. All you have to do
Mm-hmm.
is be a Paramount subscriber now. Makes it
Yep.
really
Turn it
accessible.
on.
So it'll
And
bring another level of eyes to it. So,
so pertaining to this, is your prediction then that Paramount's going to bring more eyes onto the sport, therefore it's going to make the dabbling a little, it's going to bring those dollars up,
it's going
so
to
the
bring the
handles are going to
dollars up.
go up.
It's going to bring the dollars up. The handles are going to go up. I feel like it'll, across the board, raise the viewership on not just big fights, but people are going to want to see what leads to those big fights,
Hmm.
leading to the people who dabble in general. Because if you
Hmm.
are a guy who enjoys just dabbling,
Yeah.
I have friends who bet on a sport called J Alai. I can't even make out the rules of what that sport
I've never
is.
seen it.
Right? They have a little hook on their
Hmm.
hand, and it's kind of like that room where you throw
Oh yeah, I
the
have seen that.
yeah, they throw the ball against the wall, and I'm wondering how you put a wager on this. But I've seen somebody send me a green slip of them hitting on it, and I'm like, "Do you even know what you were putting in this $25 bet on?" They're like, "No." I was like,
Yeah,
"We've gone,
they
we've
see the
gone,
lines.
we've gone off the deep end." But yes, if you're a dabbler and you could find a card to dabble on every weekend,
Yeah.
they're gonna partake. And just naturally, with it being a sport that's exciting, they're gonna start watching, start developing connections to guys who are on the rise, right? The contender series is gonna get more eyes, which also is able to be dabbled on, where the lines are a lot closer because both guys are fairly inexperienced, right? Um, which to me, good thing, but also could be a bad thing because if you catch a guy on the contender series who hasn't made that jump yet, who has to pay
Yeah.
his whole team, who's fighting for like 25-25 or maybe 10-10, right?
Hmm.
You could get, again, you're questioning integrity and you're hoping a guy will see the potential for what if he makes it, but you might start getting some throws
Right.
down there too. So I don't know. It's a crazy field. I'm excited for the eyes being towards it. I'm excited for the handles to go up, obviously, because like
Yeah.
it means people are viewing. I'm not silly,
Yeah.
right? But um, I do hope, if anything, it just the gambling and um, gaming division of the FBI expands. I hope that creates some jobs for them. Um,
Yeah.
to put it in a more fun way, I hope they have more people to observe what's happening in these circles. Because where there's people who are willing to do criminal activity, there should be willing participants to investigate it. So
Yeah.
that's how I see it. That's where I think I'm gonna leave it at.
All right.
All right, man. This has been a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Were there
this is nice. I like this. Um, but we're not done. We will be back.
we'll be back.
Hopefully we get this one up today, because tomorrow is, I don't know if this is his first card headlining. I feel like it is, but my boy's headlining a card, and
Yes, he is.
we need to go over the previews. We need to talk
Yes, we
about
do.
this card because it's such a massive card for us as a podcast, not necessarily for you
Right.
guys. But one of the early connections to us talking about the MMA outside of Nico Price, shout out Nico Price, was my boy
Yeah.
Randy Brown.
Yep.
Fighting on prelims, fighting on fight nights, and now he gets to headline the card against a guy that we don't feel like should have won last time,
Right.
and we need retribution for it. And there's so many layers and storylines on it that I feel like we could have a fantastic time talking about it. So we're gonna do just that tomorrow for you guys. But as of today, we appreciate y'all for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoy this podcast, visual and audio. The last one I got up
Yeah.
visual, not audio. This time I'm gonna get it up both ways at the same time by the end of the day. Scout's honor. I was never a scout, but I know that's what they say. Scout's honor.
It's okay. You can still have honor.
Yeah, still have honor, unlike some fighters. Just joking. Just joking. Any closing thoughts, Roger? You went kind of quiet on me. Any closing thoughts?
Oh, you went out on me for a second. Any closing thoughts? Yeah, I'm hoping that they can find something. I'm not as well versed in the fighting, the gambling stuff, but I hope that they find some way to keep the to keep this out of it as much as possible. There's still gonna be people trying to work around, but I just hope they do that. And then we'll be back to talk about the fights this weekend, and I'm hoping to touch on a couple from last weekend as well.
For sure.
And so I think that'll be good.
Yeah, 1,000%. We'll get back with you. We appreciate the viewership on the pod. First visual episode, 36 views already in a little bit under a week. So hopefully you guys are enjoying our takes on stuff, and we'll be here for you. So we'll see y'all on the next one. And peace.
Peace.